But everyone was in like a big fuss about this lawsuit, the NAR lawsuit. Yeah. It seems like people have sort of calmed down about it and that not much really changed. But just talk me through that whole process. What did people think was going to happen? What actually ended up happening?
Yeah. So yeah, that was fun times. Talk about mass confusion, and unfortunately, on the realtor side of it, we felt that we were really let down by NAR because NAR did not do their job in explaining what exactly a real estate agent, how that functions with regards to commissions. It wasn't well explained to the public, in my opinion. So it really gave the public a negative viewpoint on real estate commissions. You hear people say, yeah, that's 6%, that's gone, that's no longer. Well, it was always negotiable. And all of a sudden there was this complete misunderstanding that was always the value, that was the minimum. And it was like, it's always been negotiable. So there's just misinformation out there that it was never clarified right off the bat from NAR, unfortunately. So what's happened now in the public is we as agents have to spend a little bit more time explaining what that lawsuit was about and what the changes are today. And I'm finding more and more of the sellers and the buyers, they're understanding it a lot more before we even have to have the conversation. But we walk them through the process all the time. And basically the way that it works is that the seller still is paying the seller side of the commission. The buyer's agents have to negotiate the buyer's side of the commission with the buyers. And the seller does still have the option to offer compensation to the buyer's agent if they choose. But they don't have to any longer. Really, if you think about it, what happened was when you had a listing agent walk into an appointment and they were negotiating the commissions for the sales, they were negotiating the commission of the sales for themselves as a whole. And then if they didn't find the particular buyer, but another agent did, then they were offering a portion of their commission to that other agent, which means that agent was actually paying the other agent, or that brokerage was paying the other brokerage in the transaction. Now, what can happen is that it can be completely separate. The seller only has to pay the seller's brokerage if they choose, or they can offer compensation. The buyer side of the transaction, they have to negotiate with the buyer the compensation that they will be paid for representing them. Where it gets confusing, if the seller is offering a certain compensation, let's just say, for example, the seller's offering 2% and the buyer agrees to pay 3%, then the buyer pays the additional 1% over and above the seller. Now, where it gets confusing is if the seller is offering 3%, but the buyer only agrees to pay 2%, then the buyer's agent only gets 2%. It's whatever their agreement with the buyer is. So they're negotiating their compensation much like we have always done on the listing side of it. Now the buyer's agents are doing the same thing on their side. There's still a dual agency here in New Jersey, so we still have the dual agency option. There's also one where you could be, there's another option that has come into play as well, where you can be appointed. If someone doesn't want the dual agency, then they can actually be appointed into somebody else within your company, or a designated agent is what it's called, within the company, or even a different company if you choose. You could designate an agent to represent any of your clients in that regard. So there's a couple of more steps to it. The biggest factor that is just now that everyone has to negotiate their own compensation, which is really the listing agents was negotiating the compensation for everybody involved in the transaction. So it really kind of depends. It can work for and against, I think, for certain parties. I think it's good that the buyer's agents are negotiating their compensation now. It's only right. It does kind of separate the transaction more because now you do have the fact that the money coming from the seller is not necessarily tied directly to the buyer's agent, because they're going to negotiate that separately. Some people have said they feel it's benefited the sellers. Some people feel it benefits the buyers. At the end of the day, it's about the property. And if the seller is looking to sell and the buyer wants to buy the property and we're able to get that transaction to happen, then that's really what it's about at the end of the day anyway. But there's just some more steps in the middle of it.
And we all know who benefited the most.
Yes, and we all know who benefited the most.
The lawyer.
The lawyer. That's right. The lawyers, yep, exactly right. So I did hear an interesting stat where they said that all the people that were a part of the lawsuit were all going to be granted, I think the total was like $11 or $13 or something to that, but that ridiculously low of a number, that all the people that were involved in the lawsuit ended up getting the class action lawsuit. Everyone was awarded, like, say, somewhere between $7, $11, or $13, and the attorneys filed, their bill was like $84 million. So yeah, I guess, hey, good for them. No one asked them to cut their commission, I guess. They only asked the agents to cut theirs.
Yeah.
It is, there are, look, but I'll say this, and all joking aside, there's a lot of positives that are going to come from this, that I believe. I believe that it actually is going to cause our industry to create and have substantially better customer service than we've ever had as an industry. And that's been one of the knocks against the industry, is that the customer service levels are not very good. Communication isn't very good. Those are the two biggest knocks in our industry. And it's going to force our level of customer service to increase, because now people are directly responsible. Their fiduciary responsibilities to their parties are directly paid in compensation. Okay, so you have to provide a really great customer service for that. At the same time, and if you take offense, you take offense, and that's on you, not me. It's going to get rid of a lot of people that should not be in the industry anyway. That they cannot provide good service. They're only in it because it's a part-time thing, and they have a different job. They're only in real estate part-time. I do this as a profession full-time. So I have I am for my clients all day, every day. That's what I do. I'm not worrying about my car sales or my bartending or my restaurant work or my carpet cleaning work or my other job or whatever it might be, my painting. I'm focused on real estate only and my clients. So I think it's going to weed out a lot of that, which means the level of service will increase, because the professionals will rise now to the top, and they'll be servicing everybody, providing that service, and not have to piecemeal deals together because another agent on the other side of the transaction can't function because they're not around. And now we got to handle it for both sides. So I think there's going to be a lot of good that's really going to come out of it. I'm really excited to see what happens in the next 4 to 5 years now with this.